Sword of Coming Chapter 1146. As long as there is a dispute over the road, a battle of life and death, it will be like two armies confronting each other, with arrows on the strings having to be fired, and there will be no room for surrender without a fight or to make way for a detour. When Jiangshi pulled out the formation-breaking spear, Chen Pingan immediately took out a sword fairy banner that had been obtained from Liz Hen in the past and stabbed it heavily on the ground. The sword immortal Banzi, who had been refined into his natal creature not long ago, had only dared to be refined before, and was placed on the top of the mountain temple, made of 5-color soil by Chen Pingan. However, now a separate natal cave has been opened for him. Only from that banner a total of 18 sword immortals with silver eyes and ethereal figures floated out from them. The robes they wore were all made of refined talismans. Jiangshi's burly figure turned into a rainbow light, and on the ground, the formation-breaking spear brought out arcs of fireflies. The sword fairies in the way were as brittle as pieces of paper, and they didn't even have a chance to draw their swords. Every time the spear came into contact with the sword immortal's figure, it was like snowballs splashing out. Jiangshi arrived in front of Chen Pingan in an instant and saw the pair of golden eyes. What an abomination! Chen Pingan's mind moved slightly, and he tried to take back the sword immortal banner, but was shot by Jiangshi to shatter the consciousness. Jiangshi twitched the corner of his mouth, stretched out his hand to hold the temporarily ownerless sword immortal banner, and casually broke it. There was a muffled thunderous sound inside Chen Pingan's body, who had shrunk to the distance. A sword fairy banner that was carefully refined and carved with thousands of talismans as inscriptions, together with a natal cave, were now invalid. Jiangshi knew that this kid still had many great refining natal items hidden in his body. Ordinary monks would never dare to pursue the quantity of natal objects at will. If all fights can be won by quantity and magic, who among the monks who have lived for thousands of years is not the owner of hundreds of natal objects? However, what Chen Pingan did was right. As a half-E, he has a good innate foundation, a hungry stomach, and is not afraid of overstuffing. If he is given another 200 to 300 years of cultivation, he can open up more than 1,000 chi palaces in that human body. And then use the great refining natal objects to sit in them, and when they are enlightened and ascended, they may all think that the power of the heavenly tribulation is not enough. It can also be regarded as a brilliant method that has never been seen before or since. It's a pity that we met own. Jiangshi shook his head and reminded, is this kind of random object worthy of testing the depth of my Tao power? I advise you not to use it to embarrass me. Why don't you use your real trump card? As he spoke, Jiangshi was unstoppable. Breaking the formation, he aimed a gun directly at Chen Pingan's chest. Chen Pingan did not retreat but advanced, striding forward, letting the spear pierce his chest. With a twist of his wrist, his right hand instantly held up a thunderstorm formed by stacked formations, intertwined with lightning, like a dragon. The snake swam away. The lace sacrifice bureau was like a fist, slamming into the door in front of Jiangshi's face. He pressed it hard, and the entire lay bureau collided with Jiangshi's strong true energy and turned into powder in an instant. Jiangshi's head swayed back and he retreated with his gun. Long the gun did not forget to twist, and a huge hole was created in Chen Pingan's chest. After taking 10 steps back, Jiangshi stood still. It is worthy of a pure and pure divine body, with the realm of cloud water body and water essence. The wounds on the front of the body healed as before at a speed visible to the naked eye. 2 daggers slipped out of his sleeves, and Chen Pingan gently held them. A Caozi dagger with an inscription on it, but its real name is Shuelu. The other one, inscribed with Mu Xia, was named Cutting Deer by Chen Pingan. Just barely dodging Jiangshi's shot at the neck, Chen Pingan held a dagger and got closer. A dazzling Big Dipper formation appeared out of thin air on the ground. Jiangshi was slightly surprised, but the second shot still missed. Splitting the guy open from head to toe, it turned out that Chen Pingan used some secret method to be able to hand out the daggers at the same time as Yao Guang and Yuhing. They were both real daggers and stabbed the temples on one side of Jiangxi's head. At the same time, the stars are quietly changing. Where Jiangxi was standing happened to be near the Kaiyang star. Jiangxi smiled. He couldn't shrink quickly enough, so he had to rely on these fancy tricks to make up for his disadvantage. Even with the aid of formation diagrams and Taoist priest Bu Gang's magical power, his figure is still so slow. If you don't help people, it will still be a fool's errand if you take advantage of the right time and place. Jiangxi was too lazy to move his throne. He just turned his head slightly to avoid one of the Muxia daggers, and then raised his hand to hit the dagger with the morning dew inscription on it with the palm of his hand. It was a Caozi dagger with a long history and legendary stories. On this it collapsed inch by inch and shattered like jade fragments. He stretched out his hand again, grabbed Chen Pingan's face with 5 fingers, and fought back. He also twisted his wrist and knocked Chen Pingan to the ground. The ground shook violently, Chen Pingan sunk into a pit, and there were countless cracks around him. Jiangxi raised his foot and stepped the guy's heart. Chen Pingan's figure turned into 18 rays of sword light and dispersed instantly, condensing his figure in the distance. Jiangxi seemed to disdain to pursue him. He just raised his spear at an angle and pointed at the tip of the spear, and a majestic Tao power condensed like an arrow and shot through the air. Chen Pingan's figure exploded again, and a hole the size of a bowl appeared in his abdomen, a veritable empty stomach. The healing speed of the wound this time has obviously slowed down. Slow. Chen Pingan's face was expressionless, but there was a look of confusion in his eyes. Can Jiangxi be so fast? It should be noted that after Jiangxi pulled out his spear to break the formation, he has not yet used any military magical power, nor has he used any immortal magic. In other words, Jiangxi has always been fighting the enemy with his body as a warrior. Furthermore, at this battlefield site, the way of heaven was already superior to Jiangxi, the ancestor of the military strategist who was the first to wield a god. The sword cultivator's natal flying sword is already a special case that has been least affected by the long river of time. This is why it is said that one sword can break all methods. Ginger, since she doesn't have his natal magical powers and is in the small world of a military strategist, how can he completely ignore the obstruction of the long river of time? The most important thing is that Chen Pingan has already sacrificed his natal flying sword, the bird in the cage, so Chen Pingan is sitting in the small world and moves like a boat with the wind and the current. Jiangxi here seems to be in an invisible frozen glaze realm. Body shape, not only was it a retrograde ship, it was also hindering the flow of his soul and spiritual energy within his body. Damn, he deserves to be Jiangxi, he is really strong. Jiangxi, who has not yet returned to his peak, is already so strong. What about Dao Ancestor, who had the upper hand 10,000 years ago? No wonder Bai Jinghui reminded him in his heart that when the two armies faced each other before, the generals of both sides fought against each other in front of the formation just like in the romance of later generations. Daozu was entangled by Jiangxi, and they both got really angry. Jiangxi walked forward slowly and said with a smile, "Ascending realms don't know the magnificence of the scenery of the 14th realms, and it's even harder for warriors at the end of the realm to know the weight of the 11th realm of martial arts." The sky and the earth suddenly became dark, like dark clouds covering the sun. Jiangxi looked up a little and saw a white jade Ganoderma lucidum as big as a mountain, which was photographed towards him. Jiangxi just glanced sideways, kept walking, opened his fist, and casually punched out, breaking the yuji easily. Then there was a majestic rainstorm the color of white jade, splashing on the earth wantonly. Didn't the sword holder tell you that all the chi practitioners who have sought immortality since ancient times are no exceptions? They are all water drinkers and water thieves in a long river. Jiang Sheti rushed to slow down. Another strange phenomenon appeared on the side. a flying sword shaped like a river on the earth, rushing towards it with great momentum, like breaking its embankment. The water of the river containing the surging sword energy was like hitting a mainstay, stirring up thousands of meters of water mist. After a moment, Jiangxi walked out of the flying sword water curtain that concealed the meaning of the word blasphemy, unscathed except for his body. In the vast expanse of land in front, a huge turquoise lake appeared, with vast water waves. Hope is endless. Jiangxi saw through the trick at a glance. They were all imitation small worlds made from swords. After the refinement, he could do whatever he wanted and let the master change his shape to blind his eyes. The root of the two swords is actually the Dragon Qiu of Qin Pingan Water Mansion. The two dragon daggers inside are respectively engraved with the characters Du and Hu. There are thousands of so-called caves and dojos in the world. Which one does not live by water? Who of the so-called monks is not maggots clustered on the corpses of gods? We martial artists do not have this drawback. Jiangxi leisurely walked on the water, and every step he stepped on the lake's surface, which was like a green glass mirror, forcibly suppressed the sword intent under the water surface, preventing it from raising its head like a dragon. There was another pocket flying sword that was disproportionate to Jiang and thus, hidden in the air, and it sneaked up quietly and insidiously, but it was still only knocked away by Jiangxi's shot. If it weren't for the flying sword being stained with some demonic aura, Jiangxi might have had to wait much later to detect the traces of the water curtain that had dispersed and still had lingering sounds. It turned out to be the natal flying sword Tian Lai of the demon sword cultivator of the Xingrong sect. The flying sword just now was hit by the tip of the spear, causing a burst of sparks and turning into ashes on the way. This is the power of the spear to break the formation. As long as the grade of the thing being refined is not high enough, it will break if touched even slightly. It's a pity for him again. If he were to face an ordinary Ascension Realm monk, with these messy spells and magical powers, would an immortal have a chance to gain the upper hand against an Ascension Realm? In an instant, above Jiangxi's head, the daytime scene turned into night, the starry sky was bright, and a picture of 28 constellations with profound Taoist meaning appeared. Jiangxi looked at it intently and took a closer look. It seemed that a physical refining was used as the center of the formation, and 28 talismans made of good material were used to draw a lifelike painted statue of the 28 constellations. Jiangxi looked familiar, and remembered that it turned out to be the Jincheng Jade Emperor Temple in Qingming Xiangxia's ancient Suzhou. It was as if Qin Pingan had invited the gods to move them here, and the gods returned to their respective places in the stars in the sky. What's a little weird is that there are still sun and moon outside the star map. The signs on the same day are, after all, somewhat pieced together. The star chart array above his head was just circulating on its own, always ready to go, and showed no sign of attack, so Jiangxi ignored it for the time being. Is it the showmanship that scares people, or is it the trump card that Qin Pingan thinks is the key to victory or defeat? It cannot be just a decoration that wastes spiritual energy. It will be known as soon as it lands. The real owner who spends money is not in a hurry, and Jiangxi, who is just watching the excitement, will only be more patient. It's a pity that you are unable to practice martial arts and swordsmanship, and you are not even pure, which is pitiful. On the contrary, your own divinity, which you regard as the enemy of the Great Road, is the only one who has a chance to be pure, which is even more pitiful. There was a large lake blocking the road ahead. Jiangxi didn't even bother to take a detour and walk straight into it. He stepped on the soft green mirror surface with one step. The sword energy that filled the lake was forcibly suppressed. As arrogant as Jiangxi was, he couldn't help but admire in his heart that Qin Pingan, a young man of only a certain age, could actually accumulate so much wealth. What to eat, martial arts, spiritual energy, magical weapons, gold and copper coins, dragon slaying platform, etc. Everything is eating a bowl of decapitated rice, and the result is to make wedding clothes for divinity. Listen to my advice, you can't shut it down. The outcome of this tug-of-war has already been determined. It's useless to struggle. It's better to admit defeat and lose half of it. Being able to fully stretch your divinity is not a kind of freedom. A fight is a fight, fellow Taoists, don't make noises. At some point, Chen Pingan was dressed as a Taoist priest, wearing a lotus crown and a green gauze Taoist robe. He held a snow-white whisk in his left hand and a pocket-sized imitation white jade pagoda in his right hand. The Tao Qi all over the body is as thick as substance, with a dazzling yellow-purple brilliance, and behind him are the two halos of the sun and the moon. When he finally spoke, he made fun of Jiangxi. On the imitation object hanging in the air in the palm of Taoist priest Chen Pingan's hand, there is a white jade capital, 5 cities, and the 12th floor, each with wisps of slender treasure light flowing, and green book secrets with bursts of Taoist charm. Jiangxi laughed angrily when he heard this. In his field of vision, there was a green glazed pavilion in the middle of the lake. A swordsman in white clothes who looked like he was cooking wine to entertain guests came out. He raised his sword and walked out of the pavilion. He said with a heroic smile, "This man is very skilled. Tell me your name and come with me after drinking, it's your turn to go up the mountain to gather together." Jiangxi felt baffled, and without saying a word, he swept forward, raised his gun, and shattered the illusion of the swordsman blocking the road on the spot. It was said to be an illusion, but in Jiangxi's opinion, if he were an ordinary master of martial arts, he would have to spend countless efforts to defeat him. Jiangxi quickly figured out the connection and said disapprovingly, "The 11th level warrior who is just imagined out of thin air cannot be used for much purpose." Taoist priest Chen Pingan smiled and said, "You talk too much, and you lose your masterly demeanor in vain. Taoist friends, if you learn from me, you will understand the truth of preserving your spirit early on." Waving his fly whisk in Jiangxi's direction, the Taoist said, "You are a tyrannical person and a disobedient person. How dare you show off your cruelty? Just accept your death." Jiangxi couldn't help but laugh. If throwing a fist at him was a sign of acknowledging one's ancestors, then by using this magical power of Yin soldiers to cross the border, are you determined to change your surname to Jiang? I saw troops arrayed on the lake. It was roughly estimated that there were hundreds of thousands of Yin soldiers and ghosts, each forming a formation and setting up large banners. Some of them were leading generals, wearing armor and holding troops, or sitting in military tents. For a time, the Yin soldiers on the lake were in jingling armor, their horses' hooves were in formation, and their drums were beating like thunder, soaring into the sky. The killing energy condensed one after another, forming thick black clouds in the sky. On each sea of clouds floating in the sky like ink, there are still divine warriors wearing precious armor gathering like locusts and ants, regardless of its number. Jiangxi walked straight into the pavilion without any suspicion at all. He drank the pot of boiling warm wine in one gulp, wiped his mouth and nodded, "Good wine." After throwing away the wine bottle and walking out of the pavilion, Jiangxi said calmly, "Zhan." If Jiangxi broke the formation with a gun before, it was the martial arts method that defeated the 10 martial arts with one force. Then this moment was a veritable act of utterance. The words Zhan were like thunder rolling across the sky and the earth. The Yin soldiers on the lake and the divine generals in the clouds, among the millions, did not escape the net. They were all cut into pieces in an instant. Thick smoke was billowing from heaven to earth, and wailing was everywhere. If you listened carefully, it seemed that countless women were wailing and sobbing one after another. Jiangxi turned a deaf ear. How could the soldiers care about the dust blown away by the wind? If you don't have a heart of stone to fight, your Taoist heart will be overwhelmed long ago. Fellow Taoist, please stop and take some time to read. The Taoist priest shook his sleeves and unfolded a long scroll of history. Everywhere there were fresh battlefields of fighting or lifeless ancient battlefield sites. After manifesting a book of war, Chen Pingan gently threw the fly whisk in his hand towards Jiangxi. A handful of whisks suddenly spread out and turned into countless long lines of cause and effect, actively wrapping around the hidden body of the ancestor of the military strategist. There are thousands of ghosts and dead souls on every rope. Jiangxi frowned slightly, his face no longer so confident, and said, "Even evil heretics who are not popular can dare to hope to corrode the golden body." The Dharma statue standing behind him immediately showed signs of shattering the golden threads. Is Jiangxi not a heretic? At the same time, Taoist priest Chen Pingan also put his fingers together, held the seal in front of him, uttered the truth, and said with a smile, "I must destroy it so that I can do justice for heaven." Jiangxi's shoulders moved slightly, but a golden statue behind him shone brightly. The threads were washed away by the golden light as thick as water, and soon turned into bursts of broken ashes, fluttering to the ground. Chen Pingan looked indifferent, watching this scene from a distance, not too surprised. The military monk is indeed one of the chief practitioners who least cares about cause and effect. Perhaps he was really annoyed by Chen Pingan's series of tactics. Jiangxi once again thrust the spear in his hand into the ground beside him, and made a simple twisting gesture with his palms facing each other. All the scholars of all schools of thought have differences in the left-handed and right-handed ways of heaven. But for Jiangxi, this kind of scholarship is really boring. I can do whatever I want the avenue to do. The sky and the earth are tilted, just like the grinding of a millstone, unstoppable. All living beings and all things in it are turned into powder, reduced to ashes, scattered like flying dust. Sure enough, the entire scroll in front of Jiangxi was easily torn into pieces in an instant, and the lake under his feet disappeared. Not only that, the entire world was distorted in a way that was visible to the naked eye. Throwing out the long scroll and whisk, and uttering the big words, "Do justice for heaven," Taoist priest Chen Pingan watched with narrowed eyes. The basic cave where the 5 elements natal objects are located, plus the caves where 10 princes' mountains are found as assistants, 1 master and 2 slaves, totaling 15 natal acupoints. This means that Chen Pingan has already practiced 10 additional natal objects during the retreat at Fiola Dojo. This is far from the true total. However, he was blocked a lot by the sneaky 14th realm whose identity is still unknown and made several sneak attacks. As a result, Chen Pingan had to withdraw from the retreat again and again, wasting too much time. The refining of the natal objects was a bit hasty, as many key treasures were missing, or they were not refined to a perfect level, resulting in the overall effect not meeting expectations. Chen Pingan originally thought that this obstacle had nothing to do with the overall situation, but he never thought that within a few days, he would confront Jiangxi. Chen Pingan's previous idea couldn't be simpler. In addition to refining swords, eating gold and copper coins, and looking for dragon-slaying stones, my homework in the immortal realm was to continuously improve the quality of my 2 natal flying swords. In addition, I could only consolidate my Dao foundation and increase my Dao power. You only need to refine the magic weapon to achieve multiple things with 1 stone. Such as those in the marketplace, who have no skills at all and beat the old master to death with random punches. In the mountain fighting, victory is directly based on numbers, and the opponent is smashed to death with magic weapons. A simple idea, but it requires extremely complex and cumbersome steps to implement. What you want in the end is, of course, a unique way to ascend to immortality. That's why I preached, protected, observed and enlightened Taoist Ding. Taoist priest Chen Pingan raised his head to see the sky. The barrier of Qingtian Avenue is like a wall, the sun and moon are on the same wall, it is impossible to tell, and it has trapped so many Taoist heroes from the past and present. The true form of the star map in the sky is an ancient inkstone with the sun and moon engraved on the same wall. The back of the inkstone has the eye pillars of the 28 stars. Obtained from Jingzhuzhong, used to hold hundreds of gold and copper coins. In the Battle of Tianwai, Chen Pingan, who was at the lowest level, was responsible for sitting in the center and controlling the operation of the abbot's formation. He got this close-by object that was not clearly stated whether it needed to be returned. During Chen Pingan's retreat, he suddenly had an idea. With the help of a floating cloud boat, Chen Pingan actually succeeded in refining the object refining method taught by Gu Kan, who was able to successfully refine it, into a small cave. Such gaps in the Taoism will lead to endless troubles, just like the practitioners in the world who have fallen into the root of the disease. As for the consequences of harming the soul, dispersing the mind, and reducing merit, who is not a Taoist who is easily reduced to the inner demon dojo, and is the obstacle to the future of joining the Tao. The higher the level of a monk, the seemingly inconspicuous and pinhole-sized flaws in the past will turn into something bigger than a hole in the sky. Qi practitioners think that when their realm is high, they can then use foreign objects to mend the deficiencies in their Taoist heart. There is no perfect way for people to do it, so they can just mend the sky. How many natal objects closely related to the road of life have been broken by Chen Pingan today? Jiang Shi seemed to have some realization. Could this guy be trying to do the opposite? Although Chen Pingan has many identities and methods, there are actually more hidden dangers. For example, without the yin and yang gods, he is destined to be unable to refine his natal character, and the swordsman and martial artist are not pure. Let's first assume that his human soul must have someone. These gaps cannot be repaired, so we simply engage in a battlefield performance that is similar to dispersing Taoism. For those who practice Taoism, all Dharma is empty, and their bodies are empty to nourish their souls. Be ruthless and give up everything. Don't want any external possessions, only a clear Taoist heart is left. Good guy. How does the phrase, in order to learn and become more and more destructive day by day, is the same as, the way of heaven has depleted more than enough, but it is not enough to serve. How can we explain the exegesis in this way? What a wonderful idea indeed. Jiang Shi's previous comment that Shu Zi became famous actually offended this young mountain master who was both a sword cultivator, a martial artist, and a talisman cultivator. It's not in vain that I went everywhere to ask for information about you, so as not to capsize in the gutter. The first fight after coming out of the mountain was in trouble and was laughed at by the temple of old friends and Bixiao. During today's confrontation, there were some surprises, but in the end, there were too many disappointments. Is it possible that a young man with half a body only has this kind of moral character? So far, what's the point of not being able to fight back? The two dharmas are very close to each other. Jiang Shi was about to shoot by Yujing and the Taoist priest through the chest. At this moment, the Taoist priest holding a 5-thunder seal in his hand smashed the seal towards Jiang Shi with lightning speed. Jiang Shi's punch failed to break it, but just knocked it away, and the seal rolled to the ground. Hitting people with the magic seal seems reckless and has nothing to do with immortality, but it uses the fist power of beating a drum. Jiang Shi was confused in his heart and said with a sneer, "The thunder is louder and the raindrops are smaller. You put all your efforts into planning, but in the end, you prepared such a killing move." Chen Pingan frowned slightly, puzzled as to why this 5-thunder seal lost most of its effectiveness in an instant, and the transformation took almost only an instant. This resulted in many backup moves being unable to be used. It is not false to say that Jiang Shi was severely damaged by this seal alone, but this 5-thunder seal was the starting point for several real killers after Chen Pingan. Therefore, not to mention that Chen Pingan was surprised by this move, even Jiang Shi mistakenly thought that Chen Pingan was playing some trick. On the top of the leaning pillar, Chen Pingan in green shirt, who allowed his divinity to become the enemy of Jiang Shi, stepped forward for the first time to help save the siege. He took out a simple big bow and drew it like a full moon. There was a string but no arrows. With a bang, a golden light shot out, pulling out an extremely long shining thread, like a sword leaning against the sky. Jiangshi drew out his spear, pressed the tip of the spear against the menacing sword light, and smashed an arrow into pieces. Does Mudlegs also have mysophobia? Jiangshi had a sarcastic look on his face. Or do you mean you simply don't dare to let the divinity hold a sword? Putting away the long bow obtained from the night sailing ship, Chen Pingan opened his palm, which was as clear as mutton fat and jade, and a jasper dagger no more than an inch long emerged from his palm. This sword embryo, obtained from Deua Suishan, was named Shaofingdu in ancient times. The two flying swords of Qi and 15 have been obtained for a long time, but they are one of the very few that Chen Pingan has not been able to refine. Chen Pingan remained silent. This seemed to be Chen Pingan's first time fighting against someone. The spiritual energy accumulated in each cave was exhausted to the point where nothing was left. Those who practice Taoism need to spend money to fight with others and discuss questions. Control each of the natal treasures that have been refined to attack or defend, and deploy troops and generals. But the result was either broken by a blow from Jiangshi or stabbed by the tip of a spear. Although it did not collapse on the spot, it became dilapidated and its rank fell. Although Chen Pingan was recruited to become a young man during the battle outside the world, it was a worthwhile trip and was of great benefit to Taoism. He only witnessed the collision course of the two worlds with his own eyes. Chen Pingan began to try to survive in the human body at the Fiola Dojo. World inside, a traceable green path is laid out. Pave roads and build bridges. Pursue a state where every time you draw your sword, it will be like the way of heaven. As for the choice of taking the opportunity to unite all the natal things, it was really a last resort for Jiangshi. The reason couldn't be simpler. If you don't act like this, there will be no fight at all. Not to mention the confrontation, any delay is a luxury, let alone getting to the bottom of things and trying to see the depth of Jiangshi's cultivation. Chen Pingan, the avatar in green shirt at the top of the mountain, smiled and said, "Look, something went wrong. I guess there is a big situation in Qingming Tianxia." He collected the Dharma and took back the imitation white jade that regained its compact appearance. Holding it in the palm of his hand, Chen Pingan listened intently and heard the subtle sound like the opening of pieces of porcelain in his hometown, ding ding dong dong, and finally fell apart, a pocket-sized imitation white jade. The capital collapsed suddenly, and a strong wind blew between heaven and earth, stirring up countless debris, like snow. It's just a fight, and the losses are so huge. Do you really feel no pain at all? Jiangshi understood clearly in his heart. He glanced at Chen Pingan's real body in front of him, and then turned to look at the existence high up as a blindfold. Yes, that's how divinity makes the decision. If there is no intention, there is no mistake. The two Chen Pingan exchanged positions. The Chen Pingan in front of Jiangshi had removed the blindness, and he was the truly divine half. 4 fairy swords appeared around him. This Chen Pingan shook his neck, raised his hand, and shook his sleeves. His golden eyes looked fiery. He grinned and said, "Jiangshi, that I don't do things well. To be honest, I have tolerated you for a long time." Jiangshi smiled and said, "Same reason. Chen Pingan has always been good at stealing from his masters. For example, during his retreat at the Qingping sword sects Mi Xiafeng and Changchun Dongtian dojo, he also imitated Wu Shuangjiang and imitated 4 fairy swords. If we say that Wu Shuangjiang's 4 pieces are second-class authentic works, they are similar to the official imitations of official porcelain, which are deposited with money. So after the Battle of the Night Ship, Chen Pingan's imitation sword was once again first class. Whether it was the material of the sword or the divine will, it was that civilian imitation official. It is naturally not difficult to scare people on the mountain, and it is also effective in fighting people in the same situation. However, if you use these imitation fairy swords to deal with Jiangshi, it is inevitable that you will feel that your skills are at a loss, or that you are jumping over the wall. Jiangshi could tell the quality of those poor imitation swords just by looking at them. It seems that it is really not far away from using several techniques to suppress the bottom of the box. This kid is good at picking opponents, and he directly chose by using Yudo as the target of his sword challenge. Being truly invincible is not considered arrogant in today's world. It is estimated that when Yudo has completely refined a Yujing mountain, it will be time for him to reach the pseudo 15th level. However, if you want to become the #1 person in the world, you have to overcome your own calamities. Jiangshi is like this, and so is Yudo. Thinking about it, great chaos has begun in Qingming's world. From a peaceful and prosperous era to a chaotic era, how to transform into peace is the fate of Yudo. Looking at the young man in front of him who has used all his tricks, there is no hint of discouragement in his eyes. After all, Chen Pingan's methods should have been used to deal with Yudo. A pot of wine in the pavilion, what does it mean? It was hard for Jiangshi not to remember the group of scholars in ancient times who were high-spirited, impassioned, not pedantic in temperament, and always kept their grudges clear. Jiangshi picked up the spear, pointed it at the high place, and asked lazily, whether it is a sword holder, or half a sword, can you show some real skills that are not fancy? Easy to say. Chen Pingan, the real body in the high place, stamped his feet, instantly shattering hundreds of qi talismans on his hands and feet, and said with a smile, if you want to take over the universe with your spirit, you need to break it into chaos first. Jiangshi nodded and said, young man, how dare you think about it? The next moment, Jiangshi was knocked to the ground by Chen Pingan's hand, holding down his head. Sword of Coming Chapter 1147. The two figures merged into one, and it seemed that for the first time Chen Pingan allowed his divinity to take over the magpie's nest, allowing his pure divinity to control my life without any blinders. Jiangshi's eyes flashed, the sky changed. The sky color of this battlefield ruins also shows a trend of changing from the green seedlings in spring to the golden rice grains during autumn harvest, with green and yellow just joining each other. He knocked Jiangshi to the ground with one hand, and then kicked the burly body out laterally. Jiangshi almost broke the formation with a long spear, pointed the tip of the spear to the ground, turned around 100 feet away, stood still, and stabbed the neck of Chen Pingan, who was close by. Chen Pingan turned his head to the side, avoiding the tip of the spear, stretched out his hand to grasp the spear, spread his palms, pressed his 5 fingers to Jiangshi's chest, his palms were filled with thunder, and said with a smile, let's go. In an instant, the heaven and earth sounded like the knocking sound of Hongzhong Dalu, his hands were like hammers, and his big buckles made a loud sound. Jiangshi fell back with a bang. His figure was like a kite with broken strings, and his whole face was shaking due to the flood of fists. After a while, the hairpin on the top of his head was broken and his hair was disheveled. Jiangshi stood barefoot 1,000 feet away with a gun in his hand. He had to nail the bottom of the formation into the ground to stop his retreat. The 4 immortal swords drew 4 sharp trajectories in the air, following each other like shadows. Jiangshi used his spear to fly 2 of them away. Unlike the previous great refining objects that were shattered at the touch of a broken formation, the 2 imitation immortal swords either flew around or were raised high. After all, if it didn't break on the spot, Jiangshi used a single fist to split open the fairy sword that was nailed to the center of his eyebrows. In a hurry, there was still a fairy sword that contained the true meaning of Taoism, and it passed through Jiangshi's ribs, and was frowned slightly. Jiangshi reached out and grasped the hilt of the sword. The momentum of the long sword was blocked. The tip of the sword vibrated slightly and buzzed. Jiangshi could not easily crush it. There was a slight accident. Just as Jiangshi was about to increase the force on his palm, he saw a pair of pure golden eyes came into view. The next moment, the man's forehead was pressed with 5 fingers like hooks. His wrist was twisted and Jiangxi was thrown out of the formation together with him. Chen Pingan bent down slightly, waved his sleeves, and a fire dragon with a body as thick as the mouth of a well hit Jiangxi's back in the air. Jiangxi swayed and thrust a spear toward the sky curtain, just in time to hit a water transport captain that fell from the sky out of thin air. The halberd was broken. The fairy sword in Jiangxi's hand was able to get out of the trap. Chen Pingan put his fingers together and made sword secrets at will. He controlled the 4 fairy swords to spin in the air, waiting for the opportunity to move. A pair of golden eyes shone brightly, and in the field of vision, there was no longer Jiangxi's skin and bones, but a picture of the flow of true energy in the human body, heaven and earth of the ancestor of the military strategist. It was so majestic. Unexpectedly, I couldn't find any loopholes. Jiangxi had just smashed the halberd, and there was a majestic mountain with rows of palaces and pavilions next to him. It was like a real person's palace in ancient times. Throw it over so fiercely. Like a naughty child with weak physical strength, he throws a seal with all his strength. Jiangxi pressed his spear against the mountain seal. His suspended body was as small as a mustard seed. The muscles of one arm were tangled, his sleeves were bulging, veins popped out on the back of his hand, and sparks were flying from the tip of the spear. Withstanding the huge momentum of the mountain, the tip of the spear did not penetrate the mountain, but golden lights swam wildly like snakes, spreading rapidly at the bottom of the Fangshan character seal, and when countless golden lights flowed backwards like streams, spreading across the mountainside to the top, the dazzling golden thread has wrapped around the entire mountain. As soon as Jiangxi withdrew his spear, the mountain collapsed and dust filled the sky. From the time he drew the spear to the time he retracted the formation, it only took a blink of an eye. Chen Pingan didn't give Jiangxi a chance to change his breath of pure energy, so he stepped closer and exchanged punches in a straightforward manner. Jiangxi was punched into the sky. His wrist shook violently, and the spear rotated like thunder, shattering the lingering sword intent hidden in the fist. Chen Pingan fell straight into the ground. On the way down, he did not forget to flip his sleeves, and countless fire-carrying and water-carrying snakes shot towards the sky like flying swords. Jiangxi's palm slid across the broken formation and grasped the middle of the gun. It turned out that 2 mountains were closing together like cliffs flattened by a sword, trying to suppress Jiangxi. The attack was menacing, just like an ancient giant spirit raising its arms and clasping its palms, trying to crush the gun-wielding warrior who was as small as an ant. Jiangxi forcibly swallowed a mouthful of blood, and when it was stimulated by the warrior's true energy in his body, it was like a burning fire cooking oil, and the mist evaporated. All the blood turned into the material of the Great Road, and was melted with the warrior's true energy. With a slight turn of his wrist, the formation-breaking spear rolled, and 2 strong winds swirled from the tip of the spear, stirring the 2 palm cliffs into a cloud of dust, and gravel fell to the ground like rain. Jiangxi raised his hand and hovered in the air, looking down at Chen Pingan who was standing in the pit. There are 5 martial arts in Jiangxi's body that are fighting for the second and third. A previous hot hand with Chen Pingan still failed to completely suppress it, which caused Jiangxi to suffer a lot. In the past, everyone kept their own hands, and naturally each got what he needed. Chen Pingan needed to use Jiangxi's hand to forcibly dismantle a series of natal objects with external forces, and beat them into chaos. Jiangxi also had to refine the 3 rebel martial arts that tried to make waves in the small world of the human body. The martial arts wrapped up the aura of heaven and earth, or formed an army, and confronted Jiangxi's martial arts from the Qingming world. Dantian battlefield, they formed formations against each other, or dispersed like light cavalry, turning into a stream of bandits, attacking the Buddhist meridians and post roads everywhere, or like an army pretending to surrender and seizing the city, rising up and entrenching themselves in a key natal acupoint of Jiangxi. A large banner stands on the top of the majestic city. Jiangxi's body is full of stagnant energy and blood, which affects his soul. How can he be like an arm? Chen Pingan's hair was swaying at the temples. He smiled with squinted eyes, and stretched out his hand, condensing the pure killing energy between heaven and earth, and manifested a white-green wood spear, which is the most common in the martial arts field. Holding the spear in hand, Chen Pingan tiptoed, and the ground at the bottom of the pit shook. His figure flashed away, and like a turtle on its back, he shot out circles of fist ripples, leaving the earth devastated. It seems that Chen Pingan has made up his mind to ask Jiangxi what he is best at and compete with him. First it was boxing skills, then military magic, and now spear skills. Putting distance between Jiangxi and the imitation swords hanging in the four directions of the world, the respective swords flashed, and the blue sky road turned into soft mud, and the four fairy swords disappeared in an instant. While Jiangxi was distractedly exploring the signs of those difficult imitation swords, he was waiting for Chen Pingan to approach. The melee fight was like meeting in a narrow alley. The brave one wins. This time, the opening scene is a master of the 5 elements technique, gathering soil to form a mountain, using his mind to control the mountains, floating in the high sky, facing Jiangxi, and the mountains fall like rain. Jiangxi shattered hundreds of mountains. The sound was like rolling thunder, and the number of mountains that took root on the ground was even greater, with a line winding like a dragon's veins on the earth. Between the sky and the earth, there are still mountains shaped like a formation of wild geese, falling suddenly one after another. Jiangxi was annoyed. Logically speaking, Chen Pingan had already squandered all the spiritual energy of heaven and earth accumulated in the cave in his body before practicing. Where did he get so much new spiritual energy of heaven and earth? What kind of magical power was created out of nothing? This time in the shitty mountains and rivers, Chen Pingan moved around, using the dragon vein peaks as steps to climb up step by step. He stepped on the top of each mountain. Every time his steps connected, his figure grew a little bit bigger. When he was approaching Jiangxi, he was already as huge as a mountain god. Seeing that Chen Pingan, who was relying on the power of mountains and rivers, was not an empty frame made of paper, Jiangxi also swayed his shoulders in the air, revealing a golden body with a dense treasure appearance. Chen Pingan or go straight to use, one of them. Or the steps are shrinking, and the spear is like a dragon's veins. Finally, the tip of the spear exhaled like a flying sword and struck his hand tendons, tearing off a piece of flesh and blood from Jiangxi's arm. However, he was hit by Jiangxi with a shot and interrupted at the waist. His body turned into dozens of sword lights and recovered elsewhere. Jiangxi shot him straight to the head with another shot. Although Chen Pingan avoided it again, the air around him was. But a dark ravine of time suddenly opened up. Both sides have their own dealings, and no one dares to take it hard. The trajectory of each shot contains the endless aftertaste of the fist, and is dazzling, like arcs cutting the blue sky wantonly, crisscrossing, and the Taoism will last forever. Jiangxi's spear skills were specially created for fighting in battle formations. He opened and closed the formation and took the head of the general directly. On the other hand, Chen Pingan is just like the martial arts warrior who is a wanderer in the world. His moves are exquisite and have many names, but he loses a bit of his powerful Taoism that can be used like a god. Chen Pingan twisted his body without turning his head. He suddenly turned his wrist, with great force, and quickly thrust his gun backwards. A shot hit Jiang Shifaxiang's heart, which was about to freeze his heart completely, and then destroyed the surrounding caves near his heart orifice, so as to cooperate with the 3 martial arts inside and outside. However, Jiangxi shot him in the neck earlier, lifting Chen Pingan high in the air. 2 fairy swords pierced Jiangxi's hands at the same time, and the other 2 were driven straight into Jiangxi's insteps. The purpose of refining the magic weapon and winning by quantity is to consolidate the foundation of the Tao, to lay the foundation of the immortal realm extremely solid, and strive to one day be able to open up all the more than 1,000 caves in the human body, so as to prepare for the enlightenment and ascension. Just waiting for private teaching. Taoist Ding's ascension method has been verified and confirmed to be feasible. It cannot be said that Qin Pingan's breakthrough is only an instant to the outside world. Relying solely on self-deceptive forgetting and sealing off all past memories to build a cage, relying on long walls of words to create chasms and passes to imprison divinity, are ultimately the inferior methods of water control through blockage. Therefore, every natal object of the great refining is an additional shackle for divinity. In retreat at Fiola Dojo, Qin Pingan's idea was to wait until he reached the ascension realm before seeking a cure. What to do when the time comes for the ascension realm? The purpose is clear. It is just 3 things: find the missing pieces of the natal porcelain, and reassemble the complete celadone paperweight. Have a refreshing discussion with your own divinity. At that time, when the soul is not hindered and the Tao mind is not hindered, you can have no worries and can rest assured to try to find a great road, try to combine it, and become the 14th realm. The real body of Qin Pingan is more and more different from the divine Qin Pingan, who is responsible for building a small world, compiling a juvenile book for Taoist Ding, and protecting Taoism. The bigger it is, the more difficult it is for the 2 parties to reconcile. At least in the immortal realm, Qin Pingan has no chance of winning. But Jiangxi came to visit and started this great battle, which was indeed unexpected. What was supposed to be a great skill, in order to overcome the large number of divine creatures, turned out to be a burden. Therefore, Qin Pingan had almost no hesitation and made a decisive decision. He did the opposite and used Jiangxi to smash the natal objects and turn them into chaos. Then he used this phenomenon of the sky collapsed and the earth cracked, and the mountains and rivers collapsed, in the human world. Qin Pingan, it is necessary to separate many minds, like a scout on the battlefield, to follow the clues to find those 2 chi palaces that have the opportunity to be connected like a paradise in the cave. Once found, they will be recorded so that they can carve out the chaos and refine the chi to separate the pure. A turbulent move that created the world. When confronting Jiangxi, you have to be distracted and feed war with war. It's like practicing Taoism while wandering away from home. It's extremely dangerous. The hardships here are not enough for outsiders. Although it tried its best to attack and failed to succeed, it was a coincidence that Qin Pingan accidentally hit it and used many methods originally used to guard against Wuzhou's attack, but Qin Pingan was still seriously injured, regardless of the law. The damage to the robe only means that dozens of basic caves within the small world of the human body have been reduced to ruins. Of course, before Qin Pingan could find trouble with it, Ning Yao traveled to Fengdu with his sword and killed it. The result of this sword quest, whose truth was only spread on the top of the mountain for the time being, also allowed Ning Yao to secure his position in the new 14th realm. The top spot among the strong 14. Ning Yao raised his eyes and looked into the distance with a stern expression, unable to tell what her true thoughts were at the moment. Wu Shuangjiang followed closely behind. His figure was located in the east, and he displayed his dharma as soon as he appeared on the stage, making no secret of his cultivation as a monk in the 14th realm. This majestic statue of Dharma, almost standing tall on the sky and the earth, is holding a stack of large talismans, blue sky, created by him. As soon as he appeared, Wu Shuangjiang began to use the talismans. Every time the statue moved, the earth would shake, and he raised his hand to repair the sky. The ripples formed a sky barrier that looked like green glass. Jiangxi couldn't be allowed to escape with just a few punches. Only you, Jiangxi, can't reach the green avenue of the sky. Wu Shuangjiang teamed up with the Taoist priest Gao Gu, the monk Zhang Xiu, and the female sword fairy Bao Lin to fight against Bai Yujing, and ended in a disastrous defeat. Yu Dou held the fairy sword and sat in Bai Yujing, facing 3 14th realm monks and a peak ascension realm swordsman on his own. This battle established Yudo's reputation as the first person among the founders of the three religions to be truly invincible. Although Bai Yujing, whom Yudo relies on, is tantamount to sacrificing the most precious treasure of Taoism in the world, it is the key and indispensable. After all, the sages of the world don't say anything about this kind of thing, and the temples of hundreds of thousands of mountains don't care about it. It's whoever says it is. Really invincible is just a nickname given by others. Yudo didn't bother to say anything more about whether he was really invincible or not. The three of them, including Gao Gu, died completely. Only Wu Shuangjiang quietly returned to the 14th realm with his unique method of combining Tao. After a trip to Luola Mountain, I came here for my appointment. In fact, strictly speaking, that unprecedented and magnificent interrogation was the result of the death of all 4 people, and no one survived. It is only said that Wu Shuangjiang's for imitation, immortal swords, of immortal weapon rank have all fallen in rank. 2 of them, Tai Bai and Jinjin, were downgraded to semi-immortal weapons, and the remaining 2 imitation swords, Daozong and Wanfa, it has become a magic weapon. From this we can see how brutal that battle was and how powerful Yudo was. Taoist priest Gao Gu wants revenge, monk Jiang Xiu has his own desires, and sword repairer Bao Lin has been seeking death for a long time. Wu Shuangjiang, who was born as a military strategist, wanted to usher in a world of troubled times, so as to increase his Taoist power and practice. One day, he would be justified and his realm would reach a higher level. Since Yudo has been suffering in the world for a long time, let Yudo and Bai Yujing become Lao Huangli together. To the south, a middle-aged scribe in a blue shirt and a long coat with cloth shoes appeared side by side, and a handsome young man with a red mole on his eyebrows. The two were far apart. They each built a small heaven and earth, with mountains and rivers dependent on each other. They were the abbots of the formation and each acted as the host. Thanks to the fight with Wu Shuangjiang during the night ship battle, Cui Dongshan and Jiang Xiangjin, 2 famous boys with many treasures, exchanged their possessions and bartered for 20 or 30 magic weapons to add to their respective formations. Fill in the gaps. In the west, Jing Juzhong appeared last, his feet touching the ground. One person carries 3 completely different Tao Qi. Intentionally or unintentionally, they just formed an encirclement, trapping Jiang Shi, the founder of the military strategist. Jiang Xiangjin looked at City Lord Jing and was filled with wonder in his heart. Comparing people to each other is irritating. Is there really anyone who can achieve the feats of the 3 14th realms of Yin Shin Yang Shin? Cui Dongshan asked in his heart, Chief Zhou, have you seen the doorway? Jiang Xiangjin said, Confucianism and Taoism are relatively clear, but the third Taoism is difficult to determine. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, who is the least likely to deal with the military strategist? Who is incompatible with each other? Jiang Xiangjin suddenly said, it turns out to be a farmhouse. No wonder Mr. Zhang has to keep his feet on the ground. Can it be understood that as soon as Mr. Zhang arrived, he started a direct dispute with Jiang Shi? As expected of Jing Juzhong of Baidi City, he never used harsh words when fighting with others. He was more like a stupid young man fighting in the street. He just met each other and rushed towards him with a knife. He stabbed first as a sign of respect. Cui Dongshan looked around, checking the amount of spiritual energy from heaven and earth, and said, Hee, Chief Zhou, you are very good. You answered 2 of the 3 questions wrong based on your ability. If I didn't remind you, you wouldn't have got them all wrong. Confucianism pursues Qi Jiping. It stands to reason that they definitely don't like fighting. After all, when the world is in chaos, there is no way to educate them. But if you read a few more history books, it will be clear that there are 2 types of people who like to talk about war lightly. One is an emperor who loves great achievements, and the other is a civil servant who has never been on the battlefield and has never been knifed. Generals who have led troops and killed people have to be more cautious. Taoism advocates governing by doing nothing, which is very difficult to deal with on the surface. But life and death are the laws of nature. Of course, if you don't deal with it, you won't deal with it, but it's not that difficult to deal with. Jiangxi has been trapped for 10,000 years, and the war is unpredictable. When the ancestor of the military strategist comes back, his path will also be different. Then it changed a little. If Zheng Zhuzhong moved out of Confucianism and Taoism, he would have no problem dealing with ordinary military giants, but it would be almost impossible to deal with Jiangxi. Cui Dongshan said, "The three Zhengs are in the middle, namely the Buddhist family, the farmer family, and the medical family. Let alone today, there are one religious family and two families. Even in 10,000 years, they will still not like the military family." Jiang Shangzhen was shocked and said, "Mr. Zheng also studied Buddhism." Cui Dongshan nodded like garlic and said with a smile, "Zheng Zhuzhong has been studying Buddhism in the wilderness." Chief Shou's question is superfluous. You have been in the mountains with Patriarch Jingqing for a long time. Are you confused? Zheng Zhuzhong's behavior has always been unreasonable. For example, he was in the 14th realm of Hedao in the wild world, and he intercepted a huge portion of the wild destiny, but he was still able to deceive the secrets of heaven, and was never caught by the great ancestor of Tuiwa Mountain and Wenhai Zhoumi. During this period, Zheng Zhuzhong had been hiding in Jingqiqing, which was a sect of the Yiluo sect. Eventually, he and the city were moved to Haoren-Tianxia by Zheng Zhuzhong. He was given the surname of Zheng by the immortal realm female cultivator Qingjia named Yuanhu. Later, the entire Jinsui city was allocated by Zheng Zhuzhong to the Fuyao sect of his disciple Gu Kan. There was a Yuebei pavilion in the city. Zheng Qingjia made it a forbidden area, and even the sect leader Gu Kan was not allowed to set foot in it. Gu Kan naturally wouldn't care about such trivial matters. Note, Chapter 956 that someone beats the drum. Cui Dongshan guessed that only Zheng Zhuzhong came now. As for the other two, they should also be the Taoist bodies of one master and two assistants. Taoism. Supplemented by the five elements Yin and Yang family, and then combined with the miscellaneous family that claims to combine Confucianism, Moism, and Dharma, and integrate the principles of hundreds of schools of thought. Military commander. The legalists will be the auxiliaries, and the strategists will be the second ones. Jiang Shangzhen looked at the battlefield and couldn't tell who was who. He was so frightened that he saw the mountain master being beaten as soon as he entered. Fortunately, he fought back and forth with the ancestor of the military strategist. Such a record is already shocking enough. No one dared to believe it when it was spread. Cui Dongshan said with a solemn expression, "This is because Jiangxi hasn't really acted yet." Not really, it's because he hasn't used the peak cultivation level of the first ancestor of the military strategist to show his real trump card. I guess he is waiting for us to take the bait. He doesn't see us. Show them all and he will remain hidden. Jiang Shangzhen nodded, "We want to work together to stifle him and divide the spoils." This ancestor of the military strategist doesn't want to complete his achievements in one battle. Cui Dongshan threw down his sleeves and laughed loudly. "Don't be afraid, Mr. Zheng is here. It's not our turn to think about things, it's unfounded worries." Jiang Shangzhen paid close attention to the battlefield, with a complicated look on his face, and sighed in his heart. Would he fight with a guy like Jiangxi who was among the top 10 in the world 10,000 years ago? Things that are unthinkable. If someone had advised him to do this 100 years earlier, Jiang Shang would have ripped off his head and used it as a urinal. Compared to the sword-fighting scene on the night boat where they didn't know each other before they met, there were just more Jiangxi and Zheng Zhuzhong today, and they were mostly acquaintances. Wu Shuangjiang, Ning Yao, and the pair of living treasures smiled and nodded in greeting. Before he actually took action, Wu Shuangjiang began to discuss the ownership of Jiang Shi's 5 military fortunes, saying, Mr. Zhang is responsible for collecting 3 martial fortunes. This is the interest that he and Cui Han have agreed on long ago. The 3 military fortunes of a first military strategist are actually just interest. It is impossible to imagine what the principle and profit of the transaction between Jing Juzhong and Cui Han were. The gentleman couldn't be distracted and could not speak. Cui Dongshan nodded and agreed, no problem. Wu Shuangjiang continued, of course the 2 shares that Jiang Shi retrieved from Qingming Tianxia belong to me. As a bonus from this deal, the dragon-slaying platform of the Sui Chu Palace and all the gold and fine copper coins in the inventory belong to Chen Pingan. But he needs to get it by himself. If he goes too late, how much can he keep? Suishigong does not make any guarantee. Jiang Shangjin looked strange and murmured, if we cut it off and just look at this scene, wouldn't we look too much like villains? Cui Dongshan gently shook the folding fan with a relaxed attitude. He didn't care about Chief Shou's words, but he was actually calculating in his head. He asked, Palace Master Wu is in such a hurry when he goes out that he doesn't even have time to put in a few gold and copper coins. Wu Shuangjiang said, you have to come empty-handed. Bai Yujing is keeping a close eye on him now and it's easy to make excuses. Just saying that he was out traveling to relax, and he ran into Jiang Shi. They met on a narrow road, each refused to give way, and they started fighting at the slightest disagreement. It makes sense. Even so. Bai Yujing didn't understand, so he had to hold his nose and admit it. But if Luopishan had real, stolen goods, it would be difficult for the Confucian temple to explain it to Bai Yujing. Throw it over and no one can catch it. Cui Dongshan nodded and said, understood. There are some things that can be done but not said, and there are some things that can only be said but not done. Wu Shuangjiang glanced at the ancestor of the military strategist, then looked at Jing Juzhong, and sighed, why does it feel like the battle at Xiangji Temple? At the site of the ancient battlefield of Qingming Tianxia, a Taoist priest attained Taoism not long ago and took a path of perfect merit and virtue, reaching the 14th realm. Jiang Shang was really at a loss. Jing Juzhong turned a deaf ear. Cui Dongshan had to explain a few words to Chief Shou. It was probably an internal strife. The 2 armies were fighting. Every soldier was an elite. Their vitality was severely damaged, and the dynasty's power declined. Cui Dongshan had a good time, and in the ancient days dojo that was full of wild atmosphere, he exhaled a mouthful of snow-white mist, like a white snake swimming around, twisting and twisting itself like a rope. At the same time, Cui Dongshan carefully took out a scroll from his sleeve and held it in his hand, but he was not in a hurry to open this treasure of Luoluo Mountain, a relic of the Sword Chi Great Wall. Chatting back to chatting, Jiang Shangjin also had his hands full. He sat cross-legged on a futon in the willow shade, which was refined from ancient ruins. He opened his mouth and spat out, and a mouthful of golden sword pills that had just been refined appeared in the world. Bai Yi during the battle in Fuyazu, Yudo guarding Bai Yujing, and Jiang Shi at this moment. 3 shocking sieges, 2 revealed and 1 hidden. The first 2 games directly affected the world trend. I don't know what kind of profound impact this scene will have on the human world. If Jiang Shi wants to return to the top and restore the cultivation of his first ancestor as a military strategist, will he have to bear the fate of being killed in the second round? There have been masters from generation to generation, but in history, there are only a handful of legalists who have been able to die well. This has also kept legalism in an embarrassing situation where reality and name are inconsistent. When it is in power, it is extremely powerful and has more worldly authority than any other prominent school. However, it is often short-lived, changes day by day, and cannot last long. Furthermore, the legalist internal orthodoxy has never been unified, just as rivers often change their courses, encroaching on tributaries, and the main river channel and tributaries are confused. For example, Wei Liang, the governor of the Qinghuan kingdom in Aquarius continent, was a famous legalist who was highly relied upon by Cui Han. He once helped the old build a monument on the top of Izhou mountain. If asked about Wei Liang's family law, I believe it would be difficult for Wei Liang to say that he specifically learned from a certain lineage of legalism. Cui Dongshan looked solemn and temporarily suppressed his doubts. Fortunately, Jing Juzhong was in his own camp, otherwise he would have had a headache. Wu Shuangjiang, Dharma Prime Minister, filled up the gaps in the great Tao of heaven and earth one by one, so that Jiang Shi would not get away casually. With his true form standing on the shoulders of the Dharma Prime Minister, Wu Shuangjiang looked down at the battlefield in the distance, and in his hand appeared an ancient rusty weapon made of bronze, a horizontal blade. Wu Shuangjiang stared at the ancestor of the military strategist. Those who are strong will not die, and those who are eager to win will meet their enemies. The old road is blocked, and it is time to change the flag. Not to mention Jiang Shi, who was in the game, even Jiang Shangzhen, a bystander who was temporarily watching from the sidelines, felt that Wu Shuangjiang's words were full of murderous intent. It made him feel chilly down his spine. Let's not talk about Jing Juzhong. Wu Shuangjiang was once a famous general enshrined in the martial arts temple. He and Jiang Shi were both military strategists. Of course, they were half of their own people. They were nothing more than the upper and middle reaches of the history of this military lineage. Therefore, no matter how far-reaching the impact of this battle is on the general situation of the world, it only talks about the present moment. Regardless of how casual Wu Shuangjiang's words and expressions are, this battle is so desperate and full of murderous intent. Jing Juzhong remained silent and just nodded towards Wu Shuangjiang, indicating that he could take action. I will know the truth and be responsible for dealing with Jiang Shi's trump card in exchange for his life. Wu Shuangjiang understood. In today's battle, we will kill Jiang Shi, usurp his position, seize his name, and gain the truth. The old and the new contend. Break into the house and have sex. Have a good impression, save a moderate amount of love, and gain the upper hand in troubled times. For example, during the years when Ping'an was guarding the Sword Chi Great Wall alone, I had always hoped that Jiang Shi could help rescue the enemy. For Pei Qian, if you can stay with Ping'an, walk more and see more, your horizons will be opened, and your personality will not be too stubborn. If you get along day and night, over time, you will be influenced by him, and he will be like a child who came from a scholarly family. If you are well educated, tutored and responsible, sooner or later you will become a lady who will not be outdone by men. I am very confident in Ping An's patience and Pei Qian's potential. As long as he recognizes you, he will definitely be able to take good care of you and at least give Pei Qian an ordinary childhood. After a long journey, once you have settled down, you will go to school to study. After class, you will have kind elders at home and friends you can chat with. Take your time, don't rush, grow up. For Jiang Shi and his Taoist companion, it is as if a well-behaved and sensible daughter has appeared out of thin air. If the family can be reunited, it will be a blessing in disguise. It is indeed wishful thinking on my part, and I have made people's minds simple. As for you learning boxing from Mr. Cui and Zhu Lu, you were able to win several martial arts fortunes, which is equivalent to meeting Jiang Shi in advance. Ping'an could not have expected it, and I would have never expected it. Chen Ping'an is teaching his disciples, not competing with them. Daughter. Just to mention this, it doesn't mean that Jiang Shi is treating his good intentions like a donkey's heart. How can I guarantee that they will teach their daughter by themselves and they will not change her mind? Good. So I was in the wrong in this matter from the beginning, but you and Ping'an, the two children, have to take the responsibility. There is no such thing as being an elder in the world. As juniors, you feel aggrieved, but that is no reason why I can muddle through. Hearing this, Pei Qian finally couldn't help but want to say a few words from his heart. He gathered his voices into a line and whispered, "Master, actually when I encounter this kind of thing, it's not that uncomfortable. It's just a bit inexplicable. I just treat Zhang Shi and the two of them as strangers I met by chance on the road. I can guarantee that I did not say this deliberately to make my master feel at ease. It is indeed my sincere words. What really hurts me is that master, who has been very determined since childhood, wants to him thinking a lot. What if," Pei Qian originally wanted to say, "if possible, the master would not mind her being a drag, and she must be counted in this fight. To her, the world is big and the master is the biggest. If you are not a dead soldier, it's okay, I can trust you, you are able to contribute, you can help, just help, the mountain master won't be vague with you. You just don't have the word dead soldier carved on your forehead. The mountain owner doesn't want you to take risks, so nothing will happen to you." Xiao Mo asked doubtfully, "But even if the young master intends to avoid me, why can't I find any clues despite my current state?" Xiago said, "Not to mention that you are not really 14 now, even if you are already, with the mountain master's strategy, deliberately hiding it from you is just like playing." Xiao Mo nodded, "I blame me for unnecessary actions. I gave it to you before. The young master's robe has been carefully designed to be connected with my soul and one of my natal flying swords. The young master must have seen through this trick last time in Chongyang. Seeing that he was attacked by the ghost, the young master did not put on his robe. Sure enough, I was superfluous." Xiago just found out about this, he stamped his foot and said angrily, "Oh, Xiao Mo." Xiao Mo was absent-minded. After all, he was still worried about the fight between his young master and Zhang Shi. How could the master fight someone to the death while the dead man was just hanging around? Xiao Mo asked in his heart, "When the master was in seclusion, I was not in Luopa Mountain, and you were the protector of the Fuyola Dojo. Even you couldn't contact the master." Xiago shook his head, "This kind of thing, what are you trying to do? If the mountain master, the mountain master will definitely return to the night ship alive and kicking. If you find out that I concealed military information, you will scold me half to death and hold a grudge for hundreds of years. It's not like you don't understand my temper. Even if the mountain master doesn't allow me to reveal his traces to you, I swore a poisonous oath to the mountain master." Xiaoma said nothing more. Xiago said mysteriously, "As promised in advance, it's not me who is instigating discord. Xiao Mo, do you think that the mountain master's attainments in the soul are too genius? The Ma family's mansion in the capital of Yushuan Kingdom created all kinds of illusions are confused with reality. If there are mostly common people and warriors here, and the level of chi practitioners is not high, then finding traces of the demon clan Shaoxing in the Lotus Root blessed land is almost equivalent to fabricating a loyal Su Jiaoqia out of thin air, which is not a small trick. In Tonggishao, in that dilapidated ancient temple, the Qingyang people were toyed with by applause, not to mention the small world that drove those unpaid long-term workers coolly, trying to create a small world. Especially the ascension method used by Taoist priest Datin to protect and observe the Tao. The old scholar regained his calm expression, and without any hesitation, he vowed, "I can guarantee for Cui Han that this matter is not even a contingency." Seeing that the boss swordsman still had a doubtful look, the old scholar said patiently explained, "As a teacher, I used to worry about the long-term hidden dangers brought by the disciple's knowledge of work, but I never had any doubts about the character of the first disciple. We, as literary saints, never dare to claim that our merits are flawless, but when it comes to matters of right and wrong, we never make a single mistake." Chen Qingdu smiled and rubbed salt on the old scholar's wound. "Am I remembering it wrong? Didn't Cui Chan betray the literary sage lineage long ago?" "Sir, A student who has been heartbroken is still willing to admit it. You, sir. The old scholar murmured in a low voice, whether he admits it or not is his business. He has always had a bad temper, and I can't care less about him. Anyway, I have always regarded myself as sir. Chen Qingdu continued to rub salt into the old scholar's wounds. If I had known this, why did I do it in the first place? The old scholar said to himself, what I guarantee for Cui Chan is really not very convincing. After all, what guarantee can I give? Apart from being their husbands and titles, I have nothing, right? Chen Qing didn't say anything. I don't know whether he acquiesced or didn't take it seriously. Resentment and hatred are like cutting through a mess with a sharp knife and moving forward inexorably. When gold and iron collide, the sparks aroused are the clear distinction between grudges and grudges of a man. It's nothing more than daring to take action. Guilt and regret are like a dull knife, and the gaps on the blade are all the mistakes that have been made. To close the door and sharpen the knife is to regret. It's all up to you. The boss swordsman, the old scholar. The two people, who were very different in age but were both regarded as old people, were speechless. Finally, Chen Qingdu said that your student opened a wine shop and the business was good. If you want to drink, you can go there without spending money. In the wild world, this desolate mountain road is extremely wide. It was once a post road for transporting troops to a certain military tent. It has been abandoned for many years, and wild flowers and grass grow freely. Zhang Fenghai asked in his heart, tell me, after Lu Tai's suggestion and with the help of my protection, I finally got what I wanted. I came to the wilderness to travel, and am going to talk to Dioku. Xan was silent for a moment and said, I can't say much. I can only tell you one thing. Someone helped to make the connection and gave us a chance to get together and talk about tomorrow. Zhang Fenghai, however, refused to let go of the manifestation of the great Tao of Qingming world. That's easy to say. Being treated with a few polite words by the big shot, and being complimented by others casually, my face glowed red, I secretly rejoiced, I forced myself to be calm, and when I walked out of the door, even I was happy. Chen Qing was speechless for a moment, unable to answer the question at all. When it comes to swearing, they are really better at it as scholars. I've wanted to come here for a long time. Cui Han said, when I left the literary saint lineage, I actually thought about whether to come to the Great Wall of Sword Chi to settle down. Returning to my hometown of Aquarius continent to assist the Song family of Dali was not my first choice. Chen Qingdu smiled and said, is there such a thing? You should have come. Why did you regret it temporarily? Cui Han said, it's useless to talk more. Chen Qingdu said to himself, it would be interesting if you came to the Great Wall of Sword Chi. Xiao Sun will obey you, Hao Su will respect you, and one of you will not be full of resentment. One is willing to go out and pass the sword to kill the monster. You can even be the prison official and the hidden official. Shoulder carry. Someone has done all the dirty work and conspiracies. I believe it will be much easier for me. Cui Han then said, I'm afraid that when I get here, I will change my original intention. I'm afraid that the Great Wall of Sword Chi, which is completely different from Haoran, will go to the other extreme and become barbaric. Chen Qingdu asked with a smile, are you worried that if you become a comrade with Zhou Mi for your own selfish interests, even if you end up turning the world upside down and achieving your wish, you will still become a sinner for the ages? Cui Chan shook his head and said, what your posthumous name is, whether it is good or bad, present or absent, is not within my scope of consideration. Cui Chan smiled and said, I would like to express my gratitude to Cui Chan for trusting Chen Pingan so much and daring to place his hopes on a young man of low level. Chen Qing smiled but said, in what capacity are you thanking me? The unique Dali Xiuhu, or the senior brother Cui Chan who deceived his master and destroyed his ancestors? Cui Chen said, "It's up to you." Chen Qingdu said, "Cui Chan, I have to give you a reason to convince myself." In ancient times, sword cultivators ascended to heaven first, followed closely by scholars. Cui Yi said, "Today is different from the past, but Chen Qing is willing to die first, and Cui Yi is willing to die last. The way you and I exit may be a bit dull, but the ending will definitely not be too bad." Chen Qingdu smiled and said, "All the saints have died in ancient times, but heroes are not lonely. You and I are destined not to be saints, but heroes can barely make up the numbers." Cui Chan said, "In terms of work, Cui Chan is quite conceited and does not lose to anyone." Sword of Coming Chapter 1149. The Taoist temple's newly received mountain guard was enshrined. Guha, the guard, was keenly aware of a ripple of energy outside the temple. As part of his duty, he immediately strode out of the wing to meet the man for a while. "I saw this new gatekeeper of the Taoist temple, wearing a purple gold crown, a long light crimson silk coat, a treasure armor underneath, a sapphire belt around his waist, and a powerful black mace in his hand. He, standing on the steps, his eyes flashing, said sternly, 'Who is coming? Tell me your name. Stop quickly. If you dare to be good at this view, be careful of your head rolling to the ground.'" The uninvited guest was an elegant old man in a long blue gown. His moral power could not be seen for the time being. He did not look like a big shot, but more like an old scholar in a study and a guest of a state or county magistrate. The man heard Gu He's threat and said nothing. He just glanced at the unfamiliar face of the Taoist temple. However, Gu He just thought that the other party was shocked by him, and he felt a little complacent in his heart. He took a few glances at this man in green shirt who was trying to calm himself down. He had thin arms and thin legs, so don't be frightened by the Taoist master. Wang Yuanlu, who is as thin as a bamboo pole, as the first disciple of the temple master, has previously reminded Gu He about hospitality. Those who come here are guests. Those who can ride the wind all the way here to become familiar faces, or they come because of their reputation. Either we are old acquaintances with master, so there is no need to hurt the harmony. If you can help report it, and if it is the worst, record it in the book, and then summarize it later, let master take a look at it, and have an idea. However, Gu He always felt that such a soft style was not a good taste. The formation was too small and the arrangement was not enough. It is not worthy of the name of Guandao Temple and the name of Bixiao Cave Master. Together with fellow Taoist Jinjing, I came up with such a more shocking opening statement. This is called a head start. Taoist officials all over the world know that the threshold of this place is high. Although Gu He likes to show off, he has no intention of using the situation to bully others. That would be too cheap. Seeing that the uninvited visitor showed no sign of contradicting or offending him, he spoke a little more tactfully, "Young man, don't pretend to be deaf and dumb. The rules of my dojo are very strict. People who are idle should not regard this place as a tourist place. You, the young man, have accidentally offended my temple master, Qing Xiu, and you can't bear to walk around. I have said harsh words, and I have said good things. If this guy doesn't understand the importance and still doesn't appreciate it, it would be more lively if there is an extra handyman in the Taoist temple and he and fellow Taoist Jinjing become brothers." The young Taoist boy heard the sound and rushed over. When he saw the expressionless guest in green clothes outside the door, he felt as if he had seen a ghost. Sun Lanling was so polite, he bowed respectfully and called Senior Qingzhu. "Don't forget to wish you longevity without borders." Chen Qinglu smiled playfully and just nodded in greeting. Gu He hurriedly asked in his heart, "Fellow Taoist Jinjing, is it possible that this visitor is an extremely capable person?" Before Gu He could make up his mind, the young Taoist boy had no time to explain. The old temple master holding the scorpion tail in his hand had already walked out of the hall and came straight to this side. When he arrived at the entrance of the Taoist temple, he walked down the steps and passed by Gu He in the process. When passing by, I would like to remind you, you owe Pindao a higher level. Gu He's body became stiff as if struck by lightning. The man named Luke previously lied to me and said that you, Master, had already reached the 15th realm. With my innocent heart, I believed it to be true. How could I not have reached the realm? After walking down the steps to greet the guests and walking up to Chen Qinglu, the old temple master asked with a smile, Friend Qingzhu, have you reported this trip to the Zhongta Confucian temple? With Chen Qingli's swordsmanship, it is easy to cross the world, especially when it involves the long river of time, which is Chen Qingli's specialty. Therefore, this question has the meaning of deliberately exposing the shortcomings. Chen Qinglu smiled and said, Of course it needs to be reported. Nowadays, the rules of the Confucian temple are as important as those of Bixiao Taoist temple. I am no longer a fool. My ambitions are declining year by year, and my hair is getting grayer. Now that I am getting older, I have to obey. Old. Not to mention that after 3,000 years of practicing Taoism, my realm has stagnated and my Taoist power has not improved at all. I occasionally go out to visit old friends. I have no shame in showing off to an employer like the Confucian temple. I can only take a leave of absence for a few days. Gu Hideo's heart was shocked. Good fellow, are you suing him face to face? Why, now the monks on Howren's side, with Chen Pingon in front of them and the Qing master in front of them behind them, are they all so vindictive and petty? The old temple master said with emotion, the former Qingzhu Taoist friend was so high-spirited and high-spirited. There were no barriers or restrictions in his eyes. Chen Qinglu didn't take it seriously. A good man doesn't mention his former bravery. The old temple leader asked, Since you have been to the wilderness, have you met the Taoist monks of the temple? Chen Qinglu nodded and said, The relationship is normal, the conversation is not speculative, just a few small talk. The old temple master smiled and said, The temple of Kai Tian is made of ground, and the Qing master of dragon slaying is restrained. What kind of friends does this poor Taoist have? Chen Qinglu seemed to say casually, From hatred to pity, from love to hatred, this cause and effect is bound, the world's road has become a dead end, and I need to borrow stones from other mountains to attack jade. Lu Chen has made many mistakes for me. When I was young, I saw the world as a straight line, straightforward, simple and clear. When you are in your prime, the world you live in becomes a mess, entangled with love and hate, and everything becomes a mess. Gu He heard it like falling into the clouds, but Sun Lonling knew how powerful it was. Chen Qingli's understatement of dozens of words revealed the antecedents, processes and consequences of the dragon-slaying battle 3,000 years ago. The old temple leader took the lead to move, and took Chen Qinglu with him to shrink down at will, as if he was trying to choose a place that was the best place to enjoy the view of the human world, and said slowly, Those who have achieved enlightenment on their own have always been rare, and those who rely on external forces to escape catastrophe have been common. On the same line, Chen Qinglu took the cause and effect, and Qi Jingchen provoked the disaster. It started well and ended well. It's no wonder that you met and fell in love. It turns out that you are heartfelt comrades. Chen Qinglu said, It's a pity that Mr. Qi's junior brother didn't listen to the advice and refused to stay out of the matter. He always wanted to face the difficulties so that he could live up to others' expectations. The old temple master smiled and said, Young people are like this, they should set their first-class aspirations. Chen Qinglu said, When there are more young people, the world becomes older. The old temple leader asked, There are some things that cannot be avoided. Have you thought about how to solve them? Chen Qinglu stretched out his thumb and rubbed the center of his brow. Senior sister Xia and that evil disciple, each has a more violent temper than the other. How can I control them? On the side of Bixiao Cave Master, who knew each other well, Chen Qinglu was too lazy to hide it, and there was no family scandal that should not be made public. Think back to those days. The mighty ancient and modern, the green shirt is the same. The wind drives the sea, and the waves stand tall. The immortal king throws his sword and hits the water thousands of miles away. When a common man is angry, all rivers boil. At the entrance of the Taoist temple, Wang Yuanlu squatted on the steps with his hands in his sleeves and asked softly, "Brother Jinjing, who can let our master be so kind and take the initiative to go out to greet you?" The Xiaohua boy, who was fearless, was afraid of the senior Qingzhu. He could only say vaguely, "This person is extremely skilled in swordsmanship and has a strong murderous intention, but he likes to think of himself as a scholar." The dojo is still in Tongye. When I was in Taiwan, I would change my appearance and identity every once in a while and take the initiative to visit our Taoist temple. Master was particularly fond of this fellow Taoist and we talked a lot with him every time we got together. "Gu," he said cautiously, "Fellow Taoist Jinjing, did I kick the iron plate?" Sun Longling glared and said, "You blame me. Master Dao told you not to fall short of the authority of my master. He didn't mean that you have no eyesight at all and dare to yell at anyone you see." Gu, he complained that no one could blame Taoist Jinjing. He pretended to be heroic and said with a carefree smile, "This account will only be recorded on Taoist master's head." Wang Yuanlu nodded. He was a brave and righteous man. If there was a chance in the future, he could join Qi Gu and the three of them would travel to various states together. In the past, he was the one who took the blame for Qi Gu and suffered a lot. If he could find someone who was willing to take the blame, why not do it? After finally choosing a perfect location, the old viewer looked at the world, sighing, and asked, "Then we, who have nothing to do, are allowed to have the courage to condescend and bid farewell to a leisurely journey on earth?" This was the reason why I came here. Chen Qinglu nodded and said, "I'm very lucky." There once was a young man in white clothes, pointing to the sky, and spoke some sincere words. There are always one or two cranes neighing higher in the sky, far away from the ground, but it makes people feel sad. I've seen it and heard it, and it's hard to forget. Difei Mountain in Yuzhou is not only the ancestral home of the Fulu sect, but also the Taoist priests' attainments in alchemy, which are unparalleled in the world, and are worthy of their reputation. The tall young Taoist priest felt a little moved in his heart, so he put down a Taoist book in his hand, walked out of the building, and looked at the sea of clouds in the mountains. Occasionally, groups of cranes glided out of the white clouds and flew into the blue sky. Difei Mountain, the first of the 72 blessed places in the world, also has a sixth cave. This mountain is like a Taoist who has perfected his merits and conforms to the way of heaven, and can breathe and refine qi on his own. The spiritual energy of a state gathers here on its own initiative, just like ministers coming here to pay homage to the 9-5 Lord. The spiritual energy of mountains and rivers gathers into seas of clouds, gathering and dispersing regularly, and is tempered into streams of majestic Taoism. Taoist priests can practice here and feel like God is helping them all the time, so they can naturally get twice the result with half the effort. The laws and regulations of the Patriarch Hall of our Huayang Palace have always been greater than some of the conventions of Difei Mountain. If you don't use them normally, it's a matter of affection and kindness. If you use them, it's a rule. Will. Mao Zhu nodded. Don't underestimate the ability and majesty of a Taoist heavenly king just because Yin Xian is respectful to Mao Zhui. If he comes down from the mountain, he will walk the world as a teacher. It has always been extremely difficult for Bai Yujing to intervene in specific affairs in Yuzhou. As the second in command of Difei Mountain, Yin Xian's actions outside the mountain are to act on behalf of heaven. Mao Zhui said, "It doesn't hurt to stand and talk." You are burdened with daily responsibilities all year round and cannot shirk your duties. It is difficult for you to concentrate on polishing your body. But you still need to take some time off from your busy schedule. We need to hurry up when it comes to attaining enlightenment and ascension. Yin Xian smiled and nodded. The palace master has a heart, so it should be so. Mao Zhui asked abruptly, do you still remember the way you went up the mountain for the first time? Yin Xian recalled the past and murmured, the memory is still fresh. Being able to become the master's direct descendant has always been Yin Xian's greatest pride in his life. Small cultivation is in the mountains, while major cultivation is in the world. The ashram in the mountains makes you feel at ease, while the world of mortals allows you to see your heart. You can only see thousands of minds by practicing in the world, but it is difficult to calm your mind. You can only see one mind by practicing in the mountains, and you cannot understand the heavenly mind. Both are indispensable. Yin Xian, you were taken up the mountain to practice by Gao Gu when you were young, but you didn't know that your way is at the foot of the mountain. At that time, Gao Gu intentionally or unintentionally asked you to accompany him on the way down the mountain. The master led him to practice on his own. After that, it was all up to the disciple to realize it. It's a pity that you only cared about sadness and failed to appreciate Gao Gu's kindness. Be careful. Since you admire Master Yashan Lin, why not go to him for a drink and take a look at the customs of the Qi Jin dynasty along the way? If you feel that the Taoism in some parts of Yaoqing is open to question, go to the Qing Shan dynasty to discuss Taoism. Why bother to divide it? Whether you want to win or lose, you can experience the colorful clothes and angry horses of the Wuling young people, and see with your own eyes the academic pursuits of Taoist officials from Hansu. I really want to see the most proud man in the world, so I went to Qizhou. Go to Xuandu to knock on doors, say a word of poetry in person, walk in the countryside and ask for a bowl of water from the local people, and listen to the trackers chant. Master Jiang is not at the school, and Ning Ji and his senior brother Zhao Xuxia have been helping the Mengtong families recently, so it is always okay to have a meal or two. After a busy day, the brothers were walking among the fields. They planned to open a small stove today, cut a piece of bacon, chop it, cook dried bamboo shoots, and stir-fry a few plates of seasonal wild vegetables. I saw yellow birds flying in the fields, sometimes rising and falling, gathering and scattering. Ning Ji remembered a poem for no reason. The words were simple and beautifully written, like a catchy nursery rhyme. Draw your sword and draw a net, and the oriole will fly. Flying across the sky, come and thank the young man. Zhao Xuxia and Ning Ji stopped almost at the same time. I saw two people standing side by the river from a distance, as if they were waiting for something to happen. Judging from his demeanor, he is definitely an expert in Taoism who came from the immortal cave. Zhao gathered their voices under the tree and whispered, Ning Ji, something is wrong. It is difficult to distinguish between friends and foes. I have informed Wei Shenjun from my heart. Before Wei Shenjun arrives, if there is a dispute later, I will deliberately speak softly and beg for mercy. It seems that you are using the name of Master to scare people. At this moment, you will not hesitate to sacrifice the 3 mountain talismans and return to Luoluo Mountain first. Ning Ji remained silent. Zhao Xuxia said, listen to senior brother. Ning Ji nodded. Under the Zhao tree, Ning Ji. After the man in white robe directly called out their names, he smiled and said, Wei Bo won't come, so don't waste the 3 mountain talisman. There's no need to be nervous, it's useless to be nervous. Ning Ji, learn more from your senior brother. When facing the enemy, you need to be murderous and be able to hide your murderous intent. The man introduced, my name is Xing Juzhong, and I come from Baidi City. The person next to me, temporarily named Lu Shi, was born from the manifestation of the great Tao of the world. In the historical allusions compiled by Master Lu, he and the Holy Master the one who's not easy to deal with. After looking at the child intently for a few times, Lu Shi nodded, and it turned out to be this person. Zhao Shuxia felt a little relieved, while Ning Ji felt relieved and had a complicated look on his face. Jing Juzhong explained, Lu Shi mentioned this place in words earlier, and he just stopped by to see you. Lu Shi has something to say, and I have something to do. Lu Shi smiled and said, I believe that with Mr. Jing's mind, there is no need to deceive you, right? Jing Juzhong smiled and said, it's not always the case if something really happens. Lu Shi said, after you have listened to what I said today, you can relay it to Qin Pingan. Zhao Shuxia looked solemn and said, Mr. Lu, please speak. He is both a pure martial artist and a swordsman. He is not only a member of the Confucian tradition of the literary sage, but also the founder of the sect in the mountains. Ning Yao and Fei Ran are recognized by their respective avenues and are the #1 people in the world in both name and reality. As the co-owners of the world, their status is the biggest talisman in the world. To be hostile to it is to contend with a great avenue of heaven and earth. Whether it's me, the wild dial, or the colorful Yuan Shao, our Taoist heart is the heavenly heart. By extension, Mr. Xing originally had an unrealistic idea. Since I didn't dare to agree, I won't mention it today. The accomplished Taoist cultivators on the top of the mountain will have a feeling that the Tao is not a dead thing, it has its own likes and dislikes. As the old saying goes, the soil and water nourish the people. The water and soil in different places have their own properties, and the 5 mountains have different soil properties. For example, the 3 rivers that converge in Hongzhou town have completely different water properties. Lu Fang was also afraid that Jiang Shi would regroup and lead his troops to do it all over again, which would cause the earth to collapse, smoke to be everywhere, all things in the world to wither, and all life to be in ruins. Jiang Shi, the first ancestor of the military strategist, or Zhou Shi, a former literary master, must use their own avenues to exchange for eternal peace with the temporary mountains and rivers shattered like floating catkins, using meticulous methods and ruthless means to pursue once and for all. However, as manifestations of the great avenues of heaven and earth, in the eyes of existences like Lu Shi and others, a great account book is not calculated in this way. They must be responsible for all living beings now. Lu Fang, who once competed with the most holy master in Haoran Tianxia, worked hard as a martial artist at Leet Moon Peak, and became a Taoist couple with Fei Ran not long ago. Feng Yuan Shao, who is still a little girl in the colorful world, is a Buddhist in the West, a literary monk who travels through mountains and rivers carrying a Buddhist altar. Cultivating the Taoism is even more about materials, not to mention the use of troops. The soldiers and horses go ahead with food and fodder before they are used. The preparation of soldiers' pay and food, and the deployment of manpower, material and financial resources are all drawn from heaven and earth. Since ancient times, sacrifice requires sacrifices to reward gods. It's like 2 people. One said you have to lend me a copper coin and you can earn a few taels of silver tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, but the other only cares about the money in your pocket today. How to discuss business. How to reach agreement. Therefore, this almost irreconcilable fundamental difference is another kind of dispute between the two. If Jiang Shi comes out this time and can find them and persuade them with some kind of Tao, instead of blindly suppressing them with Taoism and force, he will have a certain chance of gaining an upper hand. It's not that there's nothing to talk about. The reason is, almost, not absolutely. For Lu Shi and the others, they had an innate aversion to the monks who practiced and sought immortality. The great monks were like abscesses that could not be cut away. The immortal mansion sect and the majestic cities and towns of that dynasty formed a wall of scabies on the earth. Therefore, fighting together is a kind of pinch of the great road to the human world. The common people and the qi refiners regard the ancient battlefield sites as a daunting road, but for Lu Fang and others, they are just scars. Zhou Chu's biggest disadvantage in choosing Manhui is that he is an outsider after all, not of my race, and his mentality must be different. That's why Dio Ke keeps trying to escape. Even if Zhou Mi offers a new and feasible path, which can even help her eat Howren's comrades, Dio Ke still refuses to cooperate with Zhou Mi. The Tao does not agree with her. It's the same reason that Lu Yefeng worked so hard to reject Yashan Lin Jiangxian in his heart. Unknowingly, invisibly, Lu Shi and Zhao Shu were talking about each other. Ning Ji walked with Xing Juzhong. Ning Ji asked curiously, "What big thing is Mr. Xing busy with?" Xing Juzhong said, "I encountered two strong opponents on the road. Since neither of them wanted to give way, I had to fight with them." Ning Ji asked, "Can Mr. Xing win?" Xing Juzhong smiled and said, "I don't dare to say how it will be." When Ning Ji heard this polite statement, he felt that Mr. Xing would definitely win. Lu Qi looked around, sighed, and bowed his head. Xing Juzhong looked into the distance and asked, "Ning Ji, I heard that Master Lu is your little master." Ning Ji blushed and said, "Master Lu is joking with me." Xing Juzhong remained silent. In the field, there seemed to be a bird circling low. Between the sky and the earth, the oriole suddenly fluttered its wings and flew high into the sky. "I don't know if it will be free or fall into a trap." Ning Ji raised his head and looked up. The young man was sad to see the bird, and the young man was happy when the bird flew away. He felt a little disappointed when he saw no trace of the oriole. He was stunned for a while and didn't know what to say. Sword of Coming Chapter 1150. The top of the main peak of Difei Mountain is shaped like a jade guide, and the Huayang Palace Patriarch Hall was built here. Not far away from the Patriarch Hall of Huayang Palace, it was once the place where the first Patriarch Jie Mao studied. It was gradually expanded into a private residence with clusters of buildings. By the time it passed to the hands of the previous palace owner Gao Gu, it was already a well-established residence. According to the tradition of "the virtuous live here and inherit the Taoism," whoever can serve as the palace master can move his family here, which is both a Taoist temple and a family home. When Gao Gu succeeded to the throne, he moved out of the old dojo and took over this place. However, because Gao Gu had no family members and heirs, he was alone, so the dojo here was always deserted. However, no matter how the house expanded and the owners changed from generation to generation, it was never overtaken by the guests. The one that occupied the main position was still the 10,000-volume library, which houses many spiritual books and secrets. The plaque reads, "The world is spectacular," which is not a boast. Mao Zhui was taken up the mountain by Gao Gu and was here to guard the gate. The sword light flickered, and a graceful figure stood there floatingly. The sound of the long sword returning to its scabbard sounded like a young phoenix. It was Nan Chang, the female sword immortal who had just left seclusion and the leader of the Huayang Palace sword immortal line. Yin Xian looked happy and Jishou congratulated her. After all, she now had a great swordsman in her family. Nan Chang returned the gift with a smile. He was also the chief inspector of the Taoist sect. Yin Xian followed the rules, and the female crown was freehand. Nan Chang called Mao Zhui, fellow white-bone Taoist, first. After a moment of hesitation, she called the palace master again. Harry Cohn didn't care about this. In the history of Difei Mountain, there have been many extraordinary people and noble figures. There are many statues of heavenly lords in the Patriarch Hall, but only 2 of them can be called sword immortals. Therefore, the South Wall was able to successfully come out of seclusion in this special year and add to the Taoism. Combat strength, or whether this matter is heard better, are secondary. The most important thing is that the south wall is helping Huayong Palace, and this new world is a good omen, showing the recent fortune of Huayong Palace. And was not greatly implicated by the death of his master. The idea of hair cone has probably been around in the lower-level market for a long time, and it always has a somewhat earthy smell. Just talking about the sword-wielding style of the female crown on the south wall, the Taoist officials in the mountain have naturally long been accustomed to it. The ordinary scenes here are mysterious from the many legends of strange monsters outside the mountains. Following the gazes of Palace Master Mao and Yin Tianjun, Nan Chang casually glanced at the scene on the other side of the mountain road. Without paying attention, he asked curiously, "Is there any definite news about when Nye Jianxian will visit Huayong Palace?" Mao Zhu shook his head. Nye Bixia is now traveling through the wilderness with Zhang Fenghai, and has established a family. However, Yin Xian took pains to warn, it is a big pass to rise from Yupu to immortal. This time Shoshan Pavilion helped to protect the pass, the kindness and fate are not small. Master Nangguan must not do it casually. On my side, there are several jars of immortal wine that have been treasured for many years and are available on the market. They were obtained from a site left over from an ancient immortal corpse after he traveled down the mountain in his early years. After drinking one jar, there will be no more. You only need to use it to entertain distinguished guests. I won't waste Yin Tianjin's wine. My Taoist friend from outside the mountain has a weird habit. I have seen people who are addicted to alcohol, but I have never seen people who smell their inner demons when they smell alcohol. Nan Chang waved his hands quickly and explained with a smile, "The reason why I ask this is because he has admired Nye Jianxian for a long time. He is just waiting here and guarding the gate for me, just by the way." Mao Zhu smiled. That young immortal with a promising future is the real drunkard who doesn't care about drinking. The problem is that Nanxiang doesn't understand the style and has let down the infatuated people. Nye Bixia, who was born in Yenzhou, was an elusive loose immortal with superb swordsmanship, but her everlasting lantern had always been placed in the main hall of Huayong Palace. There has been no information for 3,000 years, and it was only thanks to this lamp that the outside world was able to confirm that Nye Bixia had not been reincarnated. When Nye Bixia was ranked among the 10 candidates in this selection, the mountain became even more curious. Could it be that Nye Bixia had been hiding in a Taoist temple in Defei Mountain, secretly seeking opportunities to join the Tao? There are also some unsubstantiated rumors saying that Nye Bixia and Gao Gu had a good impression of each other on the road of spiritual practice, but unfortunately they were not destined to share the same fate. But even if she didn't become a Taoist monk, she could still be entrusted with her life, so Lu Bixia placed her natal lantern in Gao Gu's Huayong Palace. There was a young man on the mountain road who wiped his mouth, salivated, and said in a strong local tone, "Sister, I heard that the fish in the pond and the bamboo shoots on the road in this mountain are unique, and they are not comparable to ordinary mountain delicacies. I'm drooling just thinking about it. I don't know if I could trade my foot strength for happiness during this tiring climb." The woman with a beautiful money hanging from her waist laughed softly and said, "Foodie." A noble boy from the Yang family was looking around. Taoist priests from this mountain go into the mountains to dig winter bamboo shoots and select yellow mud tips. After the beginning of spring, the bamboo shoots that come down from the mountain must go this way. They burst out of the ground, as if taking revenge. They are all wearing armor and coming here to show off their power. The Taoist priest succeeded again. Peeling off the shells is like removing armor. The bamboo shoots are as white as snow, extremely fresh and tender, and the bacon is stewed in a pot. It is so delicious that the diners can only feel ashamed and chopsticks are flying. Nan Chang's gaze rested on the woman wearing a power fence on the mountain road, eager to try. They say that the Hongnong family has a unique way of concealing their own destiny and luck. I have just broken through, so I can try it. Yin Xian repeatedly tried to dissuade him. Master Nan Guan, this is inconsistent with etiquette. You must not act like this. This group of wealthy young people from the Hongnongyang family traveled together, so how could they not be protected secretly by an expert? Nan Chang smiled, as if he still hadn't given up the idea. In addition to her current state of mind, she also possesses an ancient secret technique that is extremely talented. She can do it without anyone noticing, and she won't do anything if the blindness is broken. Everyone knows that the Yang family of Hongnong has produced a stunning woman who can be said to be the most beautiful woman in the eyes of the monks in the mountains. It is said that in recent years, the number of marriage seekers has exceeded the threshold. There are even more mysterious rumors. There was once a passerby expert who was proficient in facial features. He had already calculated her future fate of being a mother who would honor the world, then listen to politics from behind the curtain, and finally become an emperor on her own. If that's the case, whoever marries her back home will have a lot of fun. Her life is naturally the most prosperous one in the world, but the man who Ming Media is marrying her to. And the man's family. There are various opinions, and they almost say that she is the most beautiful woman in the world in 10,000 years. It seems that all the men in the world are waiting for her to grow up. Maybe it's because there are too few friends with whom we can be sincere. Let this Taoist priest always walk alone regardless of whether he is in the mountains or outside. The pines and cypresses are ancient, with lush branches and leaves, and their skin is like dragon scales. Pedestrians stand in the shade of trees to escape the summer heat, and their faces turn green when illuminated. The water in the pond next to it is extremely clear, with fish, algae and waterfowl swimming around, just like flying in the air. For example, the fish viewing pavilion, which serves to connect the landscape with the mountains and rivers, is a solitary figure, with dozens of giant fish kept in the pond. According to the story, whenever friends come, the owner will catch them to entertain them. Born in Ruzhou, a small and remote country, and his hometown is that obscure county, Gao Gu has an ordinary background as a fisherman for generations by the water. Therefore, every time Gao Gu went out to relax in the mountains, he would often choose the wind and snow season, use a small boat as a coir raincoat man, and cook wine and stew fish alone. He was probably a Taoist priest who lived in the secluded mountains and was good at refining qi and nourishing the spirit. Even though Difei Mountain was shocked by the death of Master Gao Enzu and all the disciples of Huayang Palace were in mourning, almost everyone like Yin Tianjun didn't know how to deal with it. It shows on his face. She wasn't heartbroken, just a little sad. I always feel that a true Taoist priest like Patriarch Gao should live another 10,000 years. When that person was gone, I realized that I had never known this person. All of them were really in awe of Grandmaster Gao. I always feel that this among gods is always pure in heart, unsmiling all year round, and has an unparalleled spirit of ice and snow. As long as Patriarch Gao is participating in the meeting of the Patriarch Hall, it seems that the entire Patriarch Hall will be a little colder. What Yin Xian was thinking about was a very small past incident. A few young Taoist boys sneaked out of the Taoist temple at night. They had long been interested in the vegetable garden of an uncle, and gathered together to eat cucumbers and simmer potatoes. During this period, they met an unfamiliar young Taoist official. Big eyes stared at small eyes, both parties looked embarrassed. There was a clever guy among the children who thought that if they wanted to avoid being caught as thieves, they should become thieves together. So he invited the Taoist priest who looked at his age and senior brother's appearance to have a midnight snack together. Fill your stomach. In the night, the firelight shines, and the children's bright eyes seem to say, "Senior brother, please don't complain to the master, the temple owner, and the others. The boards are not delicious." 3 villages with different surnames are surrounded by mountains and winding yellow mud roads, following the stream. Year after year, chickens crow and dogs bark on the ground, and smoke curls into the sky. Lu Xian said he wanted to go to the village school to visit. Ning Ji said he had the key to the school. Zhao Shuxia then talked about where to eat and asked Ning Ji to lead the two gentlemen to the school. He happened to go there first. Chef Ning Ji will take them there later. Zhao Shuxia did not forget to apologize to the two gentlemen for not treating the guests well. Seeing that Jing Juzhong had no intention of refusing, Lu Shi smiled and agreed, saying that it was no trouble. Looking at the tall and thin figure of the young martial artist, Lu Xian said, "He can adapt." Jing Juzhong said, "If you see things with your eyes, the world will be brighter." Lu Qian felt this and said, "Lu Chen is right." The biggest problem of Confucianism is its unwillingness to talk about people's hearts carefully. Jing remained silent. Lu Zai's biggest problem is that he likes to focus on the shortcomings of Confucianism. The entire Qingming world was naturally overwhelmed by Tao ancestor, so he had no choice but to go to Leap Moon Peak and become a pure martial artist. Not to mention the wild dial engraving. Lu Fengshao asked, "Indeed, a person who has eaten well cannot look back and dislike the lack of delicacies on the table. Do you want to say that I don't know how blessed I am despite being blessed?" Jing Juzhong said, "Since it is your problem, of course it is Confucianism's problem." Yesheng's sentence, "If you do something wrong, look to yourself," is it not talking about people's hearts in a straightforward and clear way? It's just that we scholars are illiterate. Lu Chen's so-called rivalry between Lu Shi and the Holy Master is actually just superficial. Lu Zai's Taoism and Confucianism have long been merged, making it impossible to distinguish them. Looking at the pros and cons of the situation of the five of them, regardless of Feng Yuanxiu's young age, it is true that Haoren and Lu Shi are the most comfortable, walking around the world without restraint. No matter how open-minded Lu Feng was, he didn't like scolding. He immediately changed the subject, picked up a thread and said, "Over there at Tiandu Peak." Jing Juzhong nodded and said, "As soon as the Lizhu cave took root, it was like the dust had settled." Lu Shen finally gave up and admitted that he had no other choice. He had to lower his profile and go to the town in person to find another good opportunity. Lu Shen knew it well, and then if he misses it by 200 or 300 years, he will have no hope of joining the path. By that time, even if Zhou Zi is willing to give way, Lu Shen still won't be able to go far. Lu Qi couldn't help but laugh and commented, "The dog's tail follows the mink."